During my childhood and even during my teens, even smoking was not an issue. Drugs was clearly, they were not a part of anybody's life, none of my friends. And I think it's probably the Depression years that had everybody too busy doing things. I worked for a while at Schiffner's Newsroom. And that was a little ice cream store and newspapers and small miscellaneous stuff. I was valedictorian of my senior class. I was president of my junior and senior class. I always had great grades. I really was a studious and luckily a successful student. My earlier high school years, I met John Bristol. And John Bristol was the math and science teacher in the high school. He and his wife both graduated from Tufts. I was his #1 student, and he had been working as a civil engineer in the state of Massachusetts, laying out road systems and bridges. He did survey work, and he selected me to be a surveyor's assistant. And so I spent much time with him and earned money. Still didn't have enough money to go to college, even though my mother and I had accumulated during these years. But luckily, again, I was able to win a scholarship to both Harvard and to Tufts. And Mr. Bristol rationalized me into selecting Tufts. And what he did was to say that if you went to Harvard, you would be taught by part-time instructors or full-time instructors. You would never see a professor because it was so large. He said if you went to Tufts, which has retained itself as a very small private school, there every professor you have is going to be a professor. He's not going to be an instructor. And you will learn an awful lot more about your schooling. If you then want to go on to graduate school, then switch over to Harvard, because then you will get the best out of both worlds. And so that was the reason that I actually turned down the Harvard scholarship and accepted the one to Tufts. 1 week after my high school graduation, I started summer school at Tufts as a part of my engineering program. I was thinking of being a civil engineer, but the first year in engineering school is a generic one where you get general physics, engineering, math, and so it was not critical to my subsequent decision to shift from civil engineering to electrical engineering. It made no difference. I went to summer school and earned a half a year's worth of credits. I think I took extra courses and before I then decided to go into the Navy. I took the examination to qualify me for radar school. After boot camp, went through radar training. One of the places I was transferred to was Bellevue, Washington, D.C., the Naval Research Lab. And it turned out that my brother George was nearby. He was teaching diving. And then moved out to a little town called Piney Point, Maryland. And so I spent many weekends with him, and that was probably more time that I had with him than ever in my life, and they were fun years. In my Navy years, I went on board ship for a year. I was the chief radar specialist on board the USS Saipan, which was a light carrier. We spent some of our time along the East Coast, Philadelphia, Jacksonville, Florida, went through the Suez Canal, actually went over to Pearl Harbor, which was kind of nice because it was where my brother had been. The quarters were in an island that was way above the landing deck, and the radar masts were at the very, very top. I was stationed there to take care of all of the equipment to make sure it was monitoring carefully and we weren't going in the wrong direction when we got caught in a hurricane in the Caribbean. In that hurricane, I think we went 45 degrees. You would whip from one side to the other and wasn't sure that the bulkhead was going to hold, and I wasn't going to get tossed out of that. That was, I think, one of the scariest times in my life. I went back after my Navy experience and went into electrical engineering. And that was clearly my steady field, and I graduated with a BSEE, which Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. I was magna cum laude and a member of Tau Beta Pi, which is an engineering honoris program. But I graduated in 1951. When I got out of Tufts, I was quite worried about where I would get a job because the job market was a little bit tight then. Luckily, I was interviewed by several firms, and Eastman Kodak came along and said, and they at that time were a very successful company, and they invited me to join them as a research engineer. They have a main office, a headquarters tower, Kodak Tower, where all of the administrative staff, the executive staff were located. And they also have what they called a Kodak Park, which was maybe 2 or 3 miles distant from there. And Kodak Park has 150 buildings in it. It's a massive area. And Kodak has hit harder times, and it has condensed that to maybe 10 buildings now. But they would have buildings that would specialize in paper coatings and the film preparation. And I decided near the end of my engineering time at Kodak that I wanted to go to law school and become a patent attorney. There was a patent department in the top floor in the Kodak office. Doris is Metzger. I happened to meet her since she worked in the Kodak office. She worked on the top floor. Doris lived with her parents in Rochester, in between Kodak Park and the head office, in an area where Kodak initially made cameras. The cameras were not meant to be profitable. They were meant to sell cameras so you could sell film. The film was the area.
Why not start this summer to save all your good times with a movie camera by Kodak? And remember, wherever you are and whatever you do, fun's more fun when you save it in movies.
Doris was a very smart girl. And she clearly wanted to go to school. She hadn't yet. I mean, school meaning college. She was extremely smart and very attractive. She was thin. She was well sculpted. But mostly, I think I went for her personality at that stage was very vibrant. But I think it was she's a smart lady. We were married at St. Michael's Church in Rochester, which was their family church, and the seminary was of her brother was actually affiliated with that church. We got married in Rochester, and her parents were strongly Catholic. She had a brother who was in the seminary. And eventually became a priest and spent his whole lifetime as a priest. They all belonged to St. Michael's Catholic Church. I was a Protestant, and so we were not able to be married in the church, but we had a service there in an annex. Her brother was in his advanced years of the seminary. He had not yet been ordained. But he was a part of the officiating ceremony, and my mother and her sister came from South Hadley, so they were all a part of the whole wedding ceremony, and it was a grand one. What did I recognize in her? And I think I recognized that we both had a strong desire to further education.